I'd like to call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Parks and Recreation Board for Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. First item will be roll call, please.
Casey Telford.
Here.
Ron Mowerman.
Here.
Nancy Matkey. Here. Dean Hess.
Here.
Donovan Miller.
Here.
And Mark Castonia.
All right, pledge allegiance. And to keep the tradition alive, I'd like to thank all the men and women for their service. Action on the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Action on minutes from March 17th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personal issues cannot be discussed, nor individuals named. Board is not able to take action at this meeting. There is nobody in the public, and I do not see anybody online. So we will move on to 7, acceptance of written reports. First up will be the May 2026 Park and Recreation Forestry Department reports. I believe that's Rex.
Typically, the only things that I report on are if there are questions from the board these days.
Did everybody have a chance to review?
Is the lighting at Pioneer Park still on a May 26th schedule?
It is, and we will be specifically talking about that with one of our upcoming agenda items.
Okay,
Kind of
thank you.
doing like more of a major project rundown.
Okay,
where
thank you kindly.
So during that one, I can talk about it.
No worries, thank you kindly. It was on the list.
Rex, are there any issues, were there any issues or difficulties with securing what we need for the pool and the lake?
Securing,
Lifeguards and so forth?
no, we are. We're good, Dean.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, no, thanks to Melody. Melody's done a great job in terms of recruiting people. I think she's looking for a couple extra substitutes right now, but I think for the most part, we're good. So we're excited about that.
Okay, the other question that I have, could you give us an update on the repairs to the shelter at Pioneer with regards to the vandalism?
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, there were some vandalism that occurred at Pioneer Park. We had someone, it wasn't an easy task. They pulled up the concrete squares that held the stanchions for the bases on diamond number 3. So they actually pulled them out of the ground. They tried to pull out home plate, but apparently that was too heavy or something, I don't know. But they took one of the concrete blocks that had the stanchion in it and went over to the shelter, banged away on some of our double doors on the handles. So we wound up replacing those handles. And then they decided it would be best to go over to the north side of the building and throw that concrete block through the window, which they did. So a lot of glass. So I wound up getting called on Sunday morning, went over there, or Sunday morning, I called our park foreman who came out. He's boarded up the window, secured the window. We brought the glass in, so now we have new glass. I have not been over there. I know they've ordered new panic bars and door handles for the exterior of the building. They jumped up on the roof and they decided to monkey around a little bit with the venting, the pipes that come out of the roof, because those are kind of like tin piping type of things. So they knocked one or two of those off. Those were repaired just in-house. We didn't have to buy anything for that. So we're back in business right now. Have not had any issues since. I asked our park foreman to change out some of the security lighting around the building to a brighter security light, which we've done. So knock on wood, we'll see what the summer brings. Hopefully no more of that.
Has there been any update with regards to getting the culprits?
No. A police report was done. But no, I have not heard of any, the school district cameras were looked at. I want to say it may have been a very early morning visit by whoever did it, because they did see a car driving around the building in the wee hours of the morning.
Okay, thanks, Rex.
And then I guess it wouldn't even be on the vandalism side. I'm sure you saw the beautiful landscaping addition we've had to Ashwaubomay Park, huh?
So on Sunday, we also had someone deciding, and this happens almost yearly, which is something we'll talk about in the upcoming budget here, because that's another agenda item, but I'll mention it now. So someone decided to go four-wheeling in a couple areas of the park. Did a lot of tire spinning, threw up a lot of turf, dug it down quite a bit. So we'll wind up having to bring in a load of dirt, seed, straw, that type of thing, make it look good again. Luckily, it was not done on the athletic fields.
Right.
Typically, they do it on the soccer fields. And quite honestly, that happens every other year, maybe yearly, depending on the stretch. Enough that now at Ashwaubomay, and we'll talk about it again with the budget thing, now we've got a couple appointments that we're scheduling. Just because there's only one way in, one way out of that park, we're looking at maybe doing a security camera, not necessarily in the park itself, but
On the entrance.
the vehicles coming and going, because if something happens, could potentially be easier to narrow things down.
I will throw myself under the bus before I get on the picture. I frequently go down to the concession stand or the maintenance shed after hours, so I will throw myself under the bus. So I'll be on that camera frequently after hours, just so you know. All with good intent. But, and I do know, I can say, on top of that, I have been pulled over by our friendly Ashwaubenon law enforcement officials down there holding cans of gas and jugs of soda and things like that, but
That doesn't look suspicious.
every time that they come down and check on me, I tell them I greatly appreciate that they are doing so, right? Like, it is open, as you said, and I'm at those hours of the night doing the least amount of suspicious stuff down there. May it look suspicious holding 5 gallons of gas, but I do appreciate that they do travel through there, but I do also believe that the cameras would help potentially alleviate some of that mischief, right?
You know, people have asked, well, what about Pioneer? What about this park? What about that park? And we could put cameras at a lot of different parks. I take a look at what kind of bang are you getting for the buck. So it happens at Ashwaubomay early enough on a yearly basis with people going four-wheeling that it kind of makes sense at Ashwaubomay. Because there's typically, or a lot of them, there's like a monthly fee and the monitoring and so on, and the upfront cost as well. So that might make sense because it happens, I don't want to say on a regular basis, but it's just something that must be in people's minds that, hey, we're looking to get a little reckless, let's go to Ashwaubomay and screw around there. The other parks, I don't wanna jinx myself, knock on wood, we really don't have a lot of other vandalism issue at the other parks. So if it's a one-off thing, I'm typically not going to jump on board right away and say we need to put cameras all over the village at every one of our parks. It's kinda like if there's an ongoing problem and our public safety department is finding it a challenge to determine who's doing the damage, then we might consider a camera. At least that's where I'm going, I can be directed otherwise, of course. But I think Ashwaubomay makes sense just because it's more regular there, versus the other parks where it's kind of every once in a while, and quite honestly, it's cheaper to fix something up every once in a while than it is to spend a lot of time monitoring and making sure things are working right, and, monthly maintenance fees and things like that. So at least that's how my brain is working on it.
Most of the other parks, you can probably get ring camera information too, don't?
Yeah.
Lot
True.
closer.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments for Rex on the department report for May? All right, then I think we move on, we can accept both at the same time,
Yes, we
right?
can.
Okay, so, then 7B, receive and accept ARPA 2026 tax numbers, and thank you.
I'll let David talk on that one.
Okay.
David works with AARP quite a bit on, with the room reservations and room setup. So David?
They're just very appreciative for another year being able to do taxes in the village. We're kind of their main hub here in northeast Wisconsin, so we're an easy site to get to. We're usually the first place that fills up for tax appointments. They said it's the best year that they've ever had as far as returns go. And then they even use us as like their host site for all the training that they do before tax season gets going. So they just really appreciate the space, and overall, they're a great group to work with.
There are a fair amount of Ashwaubenon residents that, it's for all of Brown County, but there's a lot of Ashwaubenon residents that we see going through that program. They have their taxes done.
Do we provide that to them at no cost, or do they rent that for the day?
No cost.
That's a no-cost program.
That makes sense.
More of a service to the community in the area.
That makes sense to me.
They're a group of volunteers too, so.
Yeah, I did that one year. Any questions on the ARPA tax numbers or attached thank you letter? Should I read that? It's a long.
I don't think.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. I could just go over some of the highlights. 448 returns, total of $679,736 in refunds between federal and state, an increase of 242,605 over 2025. And they were very appreciative of the space, as David mentioned, and that is a great service that we help provide. So. All right, I will, look for acceptance of the written reports for both the May Parks and Recreation Department reports and the ARPA 2026 tax numbers and thank you letter.
Move to accept the written reports.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 8, items for discussion and possible action. 8A, consider discussed act on PRF projects for the 2027 budget. This will be Rex.
So, I don't know what the best word is. It's kind of ironic. We're talking about these projects. We haven't even started a lot of the 2026 projects. And here we are going over what projects should we start to consider doing for the 2027 budget. But that time's gonna be coming up sooner than later. And the specific budget numbers are going to be needed, which we collect in June and July. So we have them ready in August. And then in September, we start to have our meeting. So this is really the time to start doing that, so we know what contractors to be meeting with to start to get preliminary numbers for budget submittal at the end of the summer. So you all have with you, I believe, the 10-year corp plan. You know, I was going through a lot of these projects, and some of them are obviously bigger dollar, a few smaller dollar ones, but we've done a lot of work. A lot of good stuff has been done. I think we may be entering a stretch other than a couple of new things, you know, the typical playground replacement and whatnot, where we're looking more at the maintenance aspect of some things versus doing new stuff. You know, and that involves court maintenance. We've got some courts that are starting to fail somewhat at Smith Park and Canterbury. And obviously we have had some really good discussions in the last year on Packerland Trail, Ashwaubomay River Trail, which one first, Marina Trail, you know, so our trails are needing some work as well. So, I mean, I've got a list of some projects that I would just, I'll throw out a few projects for consideration, I guess, and then if anyone has any other things that they have heard, then we can certainly talk about those as well. So in terms of the core projects, the Ashwaubomay playground replacement is one, and that's actually going to be a little bit more on our next agenda item, only because of what we're proposing for that particular facility. And then quite honestly, this has been on our list for, it's gotta be like 7 or 8 years, and it's only like a $5,000 expense, but a new drinking fountain at the sports complex, you know, that is more ADA accessible, dog friendly, that type of thing. That's been on the plan, and for some reason it just, you know, it's just a little thing, so it keeps on getting pushed down, but I'd like to get it off just with the low cost. Talked about the Smith Park courts. So whether, I think we might be able to get by a few more years with a patching, you know, patching them. I had gotten back in this past fall from Valley Seal Coat, who we've had do a number of those, our courts in the past, a quote of, I don't know, what was it? Sorry, I should have this on the top of my head. About $14,000. So that was about a year ago, so I'm guessing maybe 16 or 17 to be safe this time. So that is something to consider for the 27 budget, is to have Valley Seal Coat come in and officially patch the courts. Canterbury has some of the same issues that Smith is having. We did have one of our full-time park maintenance crew do some patching last year at Canterbury, but it's kind of, you know, it's not his expertise. He did a good job, and, you know, we certainly made them playable, and but at some point, number one, you can only patch them so many times. Canterbury was done in 2005. That was the first project I did when I was working for the village, actually, when I got hired. So those courts are 21 years old. And then Smith Park was done the next year in 2006. So those courts are 20 years old. So we're getting into that time frame, and typically, I mean, this is a standard, not just an Ashwaubenon standard, but typically a court area will last somewhere between 20 and 25 years, knowing that there's going to be a few patching jobs during that stretch. But after that time frame, they become more difficult to maintain and to keep on patching, and at that point, you're looking at a whole rehabilitation where you're grinding everything up and basically starting all over again. I don't know if we're there yet. I think, like I said, we can certainly get by with a patch job at Smith and see how long that will last. Typically, a patch job will last depending if the ground is still moving, between 3 and 5 years to keep on pushing it. So then you gotta weigh the length of time versus the cost, or is it better just to do it new? So, but at this point, I think I might be recommending a patch job at Smith to see how that works out.
Would it be worth getting a quote to see how much it would be though, in order to weigh the two? What it would cost to replace it versus the patch?
I will probably be doing that, just because, I'll have to bring everything back and to talk to the finance committee as well as our village board, because that, Ron, is probably gonna be a question that they ask me, or ask us. I'm gonna guess, because I don't know what kind of, if they'd be able to reuse our fencing or not, because there's really nothing wrong with the fencing. But I'm gonna guess it would probably be somewhere, upwards. Because you're gonna have to reset all of the tennis standards as well. So you're probably talking, 150, I'm guessing, 200, somewhere around there. The good, it might be even be more. The good thing is, what they would do is they would just grind up the current asphalt, probably just use that as additional base and put a new layer of asphalt on top of it. And then just repound in the poles all the way around, reset the basketball hoops, reset the tennis court standards. So that may be closer, somewhere between 150 and 2, I'm guessing.
Is all the hoops and the tennis standards, are they in good shape yet? That's kind of where my mind goes, like I would say if you're gonna do it, we're gonna do it all. So if there's still some life in it, can we milk it
There's
out?
no issues with it, it's just how easily they would come out of the ground.
Yeah,
In fact, for instance, sometimes you can knock that concrete off and reuse them, and sometimes you can't.
yeah.
It depends on how easy they come out of the ground and whether they're damaged on the removal. A lot of times, I know we're having at Fort Howard Park on the north end of the walkway, our park crew just pulled up there's like a gate on each end. I don't know if you know right by, it's the route that the kids from Cormier School used to cut through the park. So by the main parking lot where they have a little library and playground there in Fort Howard, they've got like a gate. And boy, over the years, it must have heaved probably 18 inches high. So it's a big piece of concrete sticking up there, and the gate doesn't match up with the post and whatnot. So we had, the crew pulled all those out yesterday. They used sledgehammers and knocked off all the concrete, and Century Fence is going to reset those actually on Thursday of this week, I believe. So it can be done. It just depends on how much concrete is on there, and obviously we won't be able to pull some of that stuff up with a simple Bobcat. That may need a payloader, and sometimes that tweaks things.
And that's kind of my angle, is like, the patch makes sense right now if that stuff's structurally okay at the moment, but
Correct.
you have to reline everything if you.
The fencing is good, the standards are typically good, it's the cracking, and it's not, so there's different kinds of cracking, as you get into this business, you kind of learn. So a lot of times, when they make the passes with the asphalt machines, you've got your cracks that are just in between the two different runs that they do. And those typically, they seal those up, but those are usually the first things that open up. But those are also very easily fixed because they're usually a straight line for patching. And what's happening at both Smith and Canterbury is that's not where the issue is. And I think there's a picture.
Yeah.
There's a picture. Smith Court.
Page 17's got a picture.
Yeah. So if you open that up, you can. That's not a line crack. That is just something is happening underneath the ground. There was ash trees surrounding that court. All those ash trees were taken down. Maybe the roots are rotting now and creating voids and shifting where, who knows what's happening. Again, it's been 21 years, but that's not the usual kind of crack you would see. And it's not just that crack, it's cracking on both the tennis courts and the basketball court. And they're kind of, there's, I mean, it's not a thin crack either. You can, they have some gaps in it. So I'm guessing, you know, this is, court's good for maybe one more patch job. And then eventually though, and then probably in 5 years, if not sooner, need to be like done, redone. So.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was just going through the core plan and what's doable, what's not doable. The gathering areas, I mean, we got the furniture in, that hopefully, I think they're gonna be working on that next week. So that, the first official one will be at Waterford Park. But, I mean, I'm gonna be adding something over, I'd like to add something out at the sports complex. We've got that playground out there. If you take a look at what's happening around the sports complex, especially on Layden, just behind the old Paul Mitchell building that used to be there. That's the name I remember. I know it's been a couple things since then. But those are a lot of apartments, and those apartments are gonna have
A lot of people.
a lot of people and are gonna have kids. And there's absolutely nowhere for anyone to sit at that playground. So we need to have some kind of sitting area where parents can bring their kids over there. Plus, just in general, that area is becoming more, there's more things being built out there. And so that playground's gonna just get busier. So that gathering area might be something that we wanna take a look at too. And I think we also have gathering areas in this core plan for, Argonne and Smith Park, as I was looking through it. So those are other options. And what's a gathering area? Basically, it's a concrete slab that has picnic tables or seating where people can sit together as a group and talk and watch their kids at the same time. That's all it is. So I talked a lot. Those are just some of my ideas of what we might want to submit. I should also say this. We've got the trails, right? So I'm still working on the Marina Trail. I'm trying to finish up the bid specs for that so we can try and get that off the ground yet. So if we get the Marina Trail done this year, then one of our next jobs is gonna be either Packerland Trail or the Industrial Park Trail, or excuse me, not the Industrial Park, Packerland Trail or the Ashwaubomay River Trail from the Marina to Bay Harbor Condominium. Those are both equally bad. And so I'm kind of, what would be, and we're not gonna be able to do two of them in a year. So, you know, what would be your druthers on which one of those you'd like to see us get some price quotes for, to have that totally redone? That would be the other big one. Mark, I saw you were, what are your thoughts? What you got?
Those apartments that you mentioned, near the sports complex, are those all in Ashwaubenon or are some of those in Hobart? Because I know the border kind of zigzags along there.
I believe the ones that are newly built or almost done being built, I believe that's Ashwaubenon. The Layden Estates, which is the apartments immediately north adjacent to the sports complex, that is Hobart. But then that's kind of an odd square that's there. And then that cornfield is, and then the Waterford Heights, I think it is, that's Ashwaubenon. The ones that are being built right now are Ashwaubenon property.
Otherwise, Hobart might want to contribute.
What's that?
Otherwise, Hobart might want to contribute.
I'm sure they'd be jumping at that.
All right.
Thoughts on,
Yeah.
and then too, don't forget, we will be working on the NRDA project, which is around Ashwaubomay Park and Dutchman's Creek. We just worked out and kind of settled a couple concerns we had with the agreement, the DNR agreement, in the last week or two. So because of that, now Stantec is free and is starting to work on their bid specifications. So we can bid that out this fall. That will probably be a 2 or 3 year project. That is going to involve a lot. Those are creation of some fish shoals around the exterior of Ashwaubomay and where Dutchman's Creek enters into the Fox. That's where the boat launch kind of play comes into play. If we still want to do a boat launch, water's really low right now. I don't know how successful that would be. There are some step downs on the eastern side of the park, adjacent to our trail, that they would put rocks in, buckthorn removal, bird habitat, pollinator garden installation in a couple areas of the park. That's all part of the NRDA grant we have at about $2.6 million. And that's all through the NRDA program. That's not matching or anything like that from the village. We're getting that money and we would be the ones that are administering that program with Stantec, in terms of working with the contractors and so forth. So that design has been approved already by the village board. So that's moving forward, looking to start in 2027. So that'll be a fairly big project on our plates as well.
Do you know if that'll be all barge work, or are they gonna
A
have
lot
to
of it
come?
will be barge work. If there's shoreline work that needs to be done, the specs will say that we need to protect that trail, and so we're
Yeah.
putting some I know where you're going. with
Yeah,
that.
that's exactly, I'm
Or
like,
at least
the
I think
timing, the
At least I
timing.
think I know where you're going.
Yeah, you nailed it, Rex.
Yeah, so, yeah, that would be classic, right? We put the brand new trail in and now it gets all tore up with another
Yeah,
part.
we do have that one spot where they could drive over a couple
Right,
times and
so-
replace
so
it, but
we would ask, they've got certain things,
yeah,
wood blocking and whatnot, that they would put across the trail to, as heavier vehicles may travel across it, it would spread out the weight, so it wouldn't damage the trail. So that would all be part of the bid specs if they were to do that. But I'm going to assume, again, it all has to do with the water depth.
yeah, right,
Because
because
right now,
they couldn't have done it this spring.
I don't know how close the barge could even get to the shore.
They could barely do the bridge. They had to dredge to get the barge in to do the bridge, right?
Well, they had to bring in 2 cranes because they thought they'd be able to barge that crane from one end to the other. That's why part of that bridge cost increased so much, because they had to bring in the second crane because they couldn't move a barge from one side of the shoreline to the other side. So they had to work from both sides.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I don't know. They'll be blocking off a lot of that trail if the water level continues the way it is.
All right. Any more discussion on, or actions you'd want to take on?
I would like some discussion, and I'll just be, what's your druthers? Packerland Trail or the Ashwaubomay River Trail from the marina? This is the asphalt part, not the brick.
Rex, I put a priority list together. I had the Ashwaubenon River Trail as number 1, depending upon, if that was a sure bet. If it wasn't, I would go with the Packerland or the industrial park. And then number 3, I had the fixing of the Smith Park Court. Number 4, if we're looking at a priority listing, and again, because of a maintenance factor, there's no point in continually adding new things to your parks unless you maintain the other ones that you do have. And then my 4th one was the court at Pioneer, patching that up. And I believe I also had a 5th one, which wasn't discussed yet, but the maintenance or upkeep on the Waterford Park pathway.
That's in the core plan. That needs it too.
So
That one's getting ugly as well.
I guess that gives us something to start with.
I guess I put a slightly higher priority on Packerland over the Marina Trail, only because the Packerland Trail is considerably older. I kind of find it a little irritating that we're already talking about maintenance on the Marina Trail already in some of those spots. I know it's been there a while, but not as long as the Packerland.
The Marina Trail was done in 2006,
Okay,
so we're, that's 20,
up to the harbor, right?
from the marina
To that,
up to the.
to that one
south-
walkway
south
out that
side-
brings you,
The south side of Bay Harbor
Okay.
condominium. But so let's take that, Nancy, when you get to the south end of the Bay Harbor condominiums, and then you go west to Broadway, that stretch that
yes.
goes west, that stretch is perfectly fine.
okay,
It is the stretch along the water,
Brick, right?
which typically has more movement, and there was also a preponderance of trees
yeah.
that were, that trail was put like a foot away from 50 trees.
So when was,
Which are no longer there, but literally in some spots, there are tree roots
yeah,
coming up through that trail.
when was Packerland?
What's that?
When was Packerland done then?
The section that isn't as bad is Wabi to Fernando. That section was done in 2000, there's a lot of stuff happening. I want to say that was done in 2005.
Okay,
Now, the section that really needs it from, is that View? Or 172,
Yeah.
certainly let's just take
Yeah.
172.
yeah,
172 to Wabi, that was done before my time.
Okay.
I'm thinking that was done around 2000.
okay.
So I've got one priority for the River Trail, one for the Packerland Trail, and switching around. Any other,
Do we know what gets used more? Or we've got more exposure?
I would venture a guess that the Packerland Trail gets a wider use from
I do too.
more community
people.
people and a wider use. And I think that the River Trail, the Ashwaubenon River Trail is
Recreational.
becoming busier, but it's a more select clientele that's using it. You have some people that aren't even aware of it. So you've got people on it, but a lot of the people that we run into when we walk it as a group are residents that live adjacent to it. Whereas the Packerland Trail is really kind of a thoroughfare for a lot of people that want to even get, from Green Bay out to the sports complex or out in that direction. So I think it has heavier use and a wider audience. But the Marina Trail is more localized, but it is definitely picking up. In the time since we've started, as our group walks it, there were times when we were the only people on, and now we frequently will meet people walking, but in general, they tend to be people that live adjacent to it. There are more residents discovering it, and so then they do pick up, but I still would say a smaller usage.
Agreed. The simple answer is, I think the Packerland is busier.
Yeah. When do we know when the connection between our trailhead and the county park will be, the boat launch? Do we know if that's solidified as to when that's gonna move forward? I know there's,
So Brown County has bid that out. They've awarded a bid already, and I believe construction of the connection into the fairgrounds will begin this fall.
cause that's another consideration, is when that's done, that becomes a little more.
Yeah.
But,
I don't know if they'll finish it this fall. They've got a lot of work to do behind New Water, but it's supposed to start this fall. It's been bid out, and I don't know if it's been awarded yet, but I know they have the bids in, and I actually think it's been awarded.
So if it's a matter of switching between the Marina Trail and the Packerland Trail, which both of them need to be done at some point in time, are we looking at one in 2027 and pushing the other one to 2028?
That's what I would discuss with administration during the budget process. I don't think we could do them all, we couldn't do them both in the same year. I think that's a little too much. And both of them, well, the Packerland Trail especially is gonna be a high dollar project. Higher than the River Trail, just with the utilities and stuff that's there and just taking care of some stuff, even though it's already in place. And I think it's a longer stretch too.
And yet we're also looking at extending the Packerland Trail at some point in time, right?
I'm gonna guess that will not be in the near future. 5-10 years out, maybe? Not with all the repairs we have to do. There's not enough money to be able to do everything like that at once. So some of those things are gonna have to be spread out.
And if we did the Packerland Trail, are there sections of the trail that is partly Hobart that need to be repaired?
Correct.
And are we on board at all in that regards with them?
Contact Hobart unless you tell us that that's the priority, and in which case then we probably start to have some discussion with them.
So in your opinion, from having to have future discussions and so forth, does it seem like the Marina Trail would be more feasible to have that as a number one priority?
You asking my personal opinion
Sure,
or professional opinion? The Packerland Trail.
both of them.
Packerland Trail needs it more than the River Trail, just because of the use that's on it. River Trail would be easier to do, and because there's no intergovernmental discussions that need to take place, because you're also talking the tribe, Oneida, because a lot of those pieces of property where that's deteriorating involves Oneida. So there's 3 governmental entities that will need to be involved in the redoing of that trail. So, and it is what it is, right? Hey, we did it, we put it in, so certainly everyone knows that it's there, and I wouldn't anticipate being a problem. It's just gonna take a little more time to work that out. So River Trail, again, easier to do. Packerland Trail is probably needed more than the River Trail in terms of safety and number of people using it.
Then it would probably behoove us to go with the Marina Trail first to allow us sufficient time to be able to iron out all the bugs with regards to the Packerland Trail.
That's a good point. I don't know.
That's how I would look at it too, is if you need that much time to figure it out with the different municipalities, it makes sense to do it that way.
Not to persuade decision or recommendation, but just to echo that statement that Rex had mentioned, there are multiple jurisdictions on the Packerland Trail. So you have clearly the village of Ashwaubenon, Hobart. It is within the county trunk highway system, so we are working with the county on this project as well. It is their right-of-way. So we would need to get approval from the county to do maintenance work within their right-of-way. Obviously, that was part of the condition of the agreement when they reconstructed Packerland and the trail went in, that we would be responsible for that maintenance. But there's been change in leadership at the county from 20 years ago, and so just making sure we have the same opinion from the county highway commissioner as we've had in the past. And I would also add that the Packerland Trail, in particular the area that's closest to the airport or adjacent to the airport, we're dealing with a number of businesses too. So there's more individual stakeholders involved. And there's some complexities to that because the trail, if you will, kind of goes through what is perceived to be parking lots and things of that nature. So it's just, there's a lot of stakeholders involved in that project, so it is a complex project. It would require something, more substance to coordinate than certainly the river trail, just because it's a singular easement. Yeah, there are adjacent property owners, but it's a little less complex in that regard.
The other thing I might add too, if we're gonna do a multi-governmental project, we might also be able to throw in a thing about, I walk that trail in the wintertime and there's a lot of spots that are not even cleared. on the Packerland Trail during the wintertime. So I don't know if that's the adjacent commercial businesses' responsibility or whether it falls upon the municipality's responsibility.
So that particular conversation has come up in the past. That is a policy decision that the village board has reviewed and has determined not to provide maintenance to it. Just to kind of be very pointed, so the village board has viewed that trail as a recreational trail, which does not obligate it to maintain it in winter. If it were to be maintained, it would largely be viewed as a sidewalk. And then at that point, either A, the adjacent businesses or property owners would be forced to maintain it as a sidewalk into that condition, or the village would have to do it or require the adjacent property owners to do it. And if they fail to do so, then provide that maintenance. We've had, Rex, maybe 3 solid seasons of conversation prior to each winter season. I want to say at least the last 3 years about whether or not that's going to be maintained in the winter. 4 maybe?
Yeah.
And each year the board has said, yeah, we don't want to maintain it in the winter because we don't want it to become a sidewalk, if you will, and bear that degree of liability. Not to say that it wouldn't be desired by the community, it's just a policy decision the board has yet to commit to at this point.
Dean, I think part of the thing was too, because of its proximity to Packerland, the amount of snow that the county would throw on there from constant plowing, we would never be able to maintain that safely. I mean, it would be, you'd literally have to have a crew doing that trail every day. With the ice and the slush and everything else because that would be slung on that trail. And that was part of the whole discussion at the village board level is what's doable, what can be cleared and just pretty much left until the next snowfall. And the Packerland Trail was not one of those, just because of the amount of times that we would need to be clearing it multiple times after each snow. For whether that's right or wrong, that's the decision that had been made at the village board level.
Do we maintain the Marina Trail
We do.
during the winter?
Yeah, each year what we've been doing is we kind of prepare a map, if you will, of sidewalks and trails that the village maintains. So those are those safe routes to school, sidewalk routes. It identifies what the adjacent property owners are responsible for, and then we look at those recreational trails. And I believe, and Rex will correct me if I'm wrong, but the Marina Trail is the only recreation trail that we maintain in the winter. There may be some small segments that connect sidewalk areas, but I believe that's like the only point-to-point trail that we maintain. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, well, we do Wabi, we do the Wabi Trail,
Sure,
and we do the Sand Acres Trail,
okay.
because of the proximity with the neighborhoods and the people walking.
Sure.
If that's the case, which I'm not familiar with it from in the past, I guess I'd be leaning more than at the Marina Trail if it's something we're gonna have available in the wintertime too.
Well, I guess I still would keep my number 1 priority as the marina.
I would second that too, I think the Packerland's gonna take a little work, I think. As Joel pointed out, with the multi-jurisdictions, just to make sure we have a bulletproof plan to get it done from, point A to point B without any hiccups, without any patchwork, it could just be done then. To have that set up, that gives a little time to work through everything. I'm sure you gotta contact the businesses that it's gonna disrupt, you gotta work with all the municipalities, so I would lean towards the Marina Trail for 2027, and then Packerland Trail probably start on getting those balls rolling down the field, or at least to let them know that this is a project coming up, make sure there's buy-in before we make it our top priority, just to have some of our ducks in a row.
And Rex, just one last thing, is there been any discussion, I know there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, but anything going past the Railroad Museum as far as a trail?
Plan-wise, there's always been discussion of extending it from the marina northward behind the Railroad Museum. The challenge with that is, I want to say back in 2007, where we thought the trail could empty onto, what is that, Bozar, right there? Just next, immediately north. That wound up having a house built on it. So there's really no good exit point for the trail anymore to go into that neighborhood. You're still talking another bridge that would need to go across Dutchman's Creek.
Right.
Not that far off from the distance of the bridge we just built. So the bridge portion of it would probably be at least 2 million. You'd also have to move it far enough away from the railroad trestle, because you can't have the pedestrian bridge right next to the railroad. Even though it's the Railroad Museum, it still falls under railroad guidelines. So there has to be like a distance between the two of them. So now you're talking, that bridge has to almost be like semicircular, moving out into the water a little bit, so that it doesn't get close to that railroad bridge. So it's, I'm not, never say never. A lot of people were surprised that we were able to build the bridge into Ashwaubomay, which I think is a great addition, to our community. But I don't know whether, it'll be a while if that second one ever comes to fruition.
So we're really looking at the terminus being at the marina and then heading down towards through Brown County Park.
Correct.
And then emptying out into De Pere, they could go through De Pere, cross the bridge, and then pick up the Fox River Trail.
And De Pere's actually working on making sure once the addition into the Brown County Fairgrounds is complete, they're looking at any additions that may need to be done in De Pere to get the people from the fairgrounds over to the Fox River Trail on the east side of town.
Okay,
They've got a lot of the pieces in place right now, and they've got nice bike lanes already and sidewalks, so I don't think they have too much to do. I think with the number of homes, and they've got a couple of paper mills that would need to, I don't think they're gonna be able to continue a waterfront trail in De Pere, but I think they're looking at kind of continuing an official route through the neighborhood on Broadway and then, through the downtown area, and across the bridge to get to the Fox River Trail.
well, then I'd go with the marina and then patch jobs at the various parks for the courts.
Anybody else have suggestions?
Could you guys tell me to go ahead with the drinking fountain, please? $5,000.
I want a $5,000 drinking fountain. I would also go with the patch route just to push that, I don't wanna say push it down the road a little bit, but if we can get another 5 years out of it and the rest of it's in decent shape, like that's,
Some of these trail redos are gonna be fairly large dollar amounts, which is gonna leave not as many dollars for some of the other things.
okay. So I would go, Marina Trail, get that drinking fountain.
Where is that going again?
Sports complex and the softball quad. Then we'll do the dog bowl dish at Jerry Van Sistine Park. It's very popular.
Yeah, people love
And
it.
so that we'll wind up doing the same type of fountain out at the sports complex.
Is the plan to eventually put them in all of our parks?
Drinking fountains don't need to be replaced that often, but I like that idea.
I mean, I see people exercising their dogs in Pioneer and Waterford all the time, so it seems like those would be good locations as well.
I would also like to see those gathering areas happen too. That's a pretty easy thing fiscally wise. Like, I think they're easy to put in, and we gotta get more people sitting around and talking like humans and not androids. But that's just my opinion.
What does continued lake upgrades entail?
So Mel has done some research. It's not going to work real well right now for different reasons. About maybe doing a large inflatable in the lake.
Okay,
Unfortunately, but talking with the rep, and he made a good point, if you only have one or two, they're going to be inundated by everybody. And you're not gonna be able to control how many people, whereas if you did like a lot of campgrounds have whole rooms and stuff like
Right.
that, you know, or whole systems and courses
yep,
in the water, that spreads everybody out.
yep.
So he actually recommended against that. But that being said, the platform at Ashwaubomay Lake has that 3-meter diving board that's vintage 1974. At some point, we need to probably take a look at, is this going to continue to last? So then there's different options. Then there's like big sheets of acrylic that go up 10, 20 feet tall with like rock climbing holes. So where you know, it kind of like almost at an angle. So you're climbing backwards so that if you fall into the water. So there's other different things that could potentially replace that 3-meter board. So that's something else we've talked about. We've talked about in the kiddie area, maybe putting another fiberglass type thing or some kiddie swings actually in the water. We've talked about that. And another thing that has been brought up, and this, again, not a priority right now, but thank you for bringing it up. On the south end of the lake, we had talked about maybe pushing that fence back just a little bit more and having an elevated grass seating area. People go to the lake, they know it's a sand beach, but some of them still don't like to sit in the sand, you know, especially if they're watching their kids. If you go to like, I'll use Joanne's Water Park, for example, in Green Bay. You know, there's a, you know, you've got the deck, but then, you know, you got about a 3-foot lift, and then you've got a nice elevated grass area where a lot of people will just throw a beach towel out. And so, I mean, it's, I wouldn't say cheap, but it's an easy amenity. You know, if someone didn't always want to sit in the sand. Again, we have a lot of other higher priorities for that, for the lake, but those are just things that we've kind of bantered about is maybe we want to look at some point in the future.
Have we found when we've added amenities, like, you know, when we upgraded the playground and there's that new stuff over there, we bring more people in?
That's a huge change, and that playground, you've got tons of kids playing on it. Is it bringing more people in? That's going to be weather dependent. I know the playground is definitely being used a lot more than it ever has been, or has been with that older equipment that we've had. So I know the kids really enjoy the stuff that Mel picked out and we had installed. I don't see a huge increase in attendance because of it. It's
Okay.
more of a one-to-one replacement type of a thing.
And am I correct, are some of the other local outdoor pools not going to be operating? Some of the ones, or is that incorrect? Some of the Green Bay pools, are they not open anymore? Are there fewer in the area to choose from?
They've always talked about that. I mean, you've got Joanne's Aquatic Center, you've got Colburn, and you've got the over on Fisk, the old Fisk pool, which is the Rush Center, the
Okay.
Rush Aquatic Center. Sorry, I think of all these names. It's always been talked about if there's a budget concern, Colburn's always seems to be on the chopping block just because it has less attendance. It's a whole different type of pool experience than obviously a water park. It's much more open water play, but I have not heard that they're shutting anything down.
Okay.
Or maybe it won't be open as often. That's been talked about as well.
It just seems everything we've done has made that more appealing, and so I wondered, as we become more appealing, if we have more people, and if that's, if some of the amenities that you're looking at are in that budget realm, that it would be worthwhile to do it.
I couldn't say right now.
Okay, thank you.
Again, the playground was more of that just needed to be replaced. The other
Yep.
stuff was falling apart.
Do we have meters on the gate so we know how many people come in and out? So if somebody asks, well, how many additional people came for the truck rally or the food trucks for that night, would we be able to say, well, on a normal such and such night, we had 500 cars come through, and on the truck food nights, we had 1,000 come through?
No, I mean, we know what the attendance is at the lake just from the admissions, because they ring up everyone individually. But in terms of just people using the park, there's no counter or anything like that. We did I don't want to say an educated guess, like, but I mean, just with the nightly soccer that goes on there, the nightly youth baseball, we know we get 24,000 people a season at the lake with the people walking. We've got the special events, the food truck rallies, the picnic shelter rentals throughout the whole year. You can see, I mean, the Marines and the Army National Guard use Ashwaubomay for, if you ever drive there in the morning. I don't know if you go there in the morning, but they're out there almost every morning doing physical fitness tests and stuff like that in the center. We're looking probably at well over 200,000 people using that park a year. That may be almost conservative, which seems like a lot, but I mean, it's constantly, there's a lot of people in there. Ashwaubomay is our flagship. It's by far our busiest park. It's what the village is more, most known for. If you ask the general person, name a park in the village, and they're going to say Ashwaubomay. So, but we did, that number count was over 200,000. That was just what we figured out maybe about 2-3 years ago when we did that. Because we figured out the number of baseball games, the number of practices, 4 fields going at once.
Yeah.
10 or 12 kids to a team, 1 or 2 parents for, you know what I mean? The tournaments on the weekends, those numbers get up there. That's why we put a lot of attention to Ashwaubomay in the last 10 years, is just because it's just getting busier.
Having been a supervisor in that park in the early 80s, I can tell you it has changed tremendously. And it's been a blessing to Brown County.
It's a destination park.
You bet.
Okay, so let's,
It gives me a good start. And the reason why we're doing this is because, I mean, David and I and Mel and whoever is assigned different projects here needs to go, and we need to work with contractors to get cost estimates to submit to administration once that time comes. And so this gives us, that's why we're doing it now in May, so that we've got the time to do that. Because right now, the contractors aren't looking to give us budget numbers for 27. They're looking to try and get the projects off the ground that they've got to do this year. So a lot of times, I mean, if I called up, I guarantee you 1 or 2 contractors right now, I'll be lucky if they meet me in the next 2 months to get some numbers in. So, I mean, that's how busy some of them are that they're getting to be. So, appreciate your thoughts. Gives us a direction on where to go with it.
you found what you needed in our discussion? I don't think there's any real action.
I'm good. I just didn't know, like, we've got our whole corp plan here, so
Yeah.
a lot of stuff on there. I didn't know if anyone, was necessarily wanting anything moved up or had heard anything in the community of making something more of a priority than we have it.
I think adding that gathering at the sports complex is a good idea. As you mentioned, regardless if they're on the Howard side or the Ashwaubenon side, they're going to go to that park because it's the closest. And they should have places to sit and do things, and there's room, so.
And with the fourth sheet of ice, it's not gonna get any.
And then there's that, yeah. You have, and your softball leagues, I know you were there out there, and I know they were playing cricket last night, so like, it's hopping, and I'm sure there's probably soccer on the other field too, so.
It's not on the agenda, so I don't wanna necessarily do it, but Dave, 5 years ago, we had no modified teams, like we had lost all of our modified teams, and we used to host national modified tournaments out there, and certainly in state tournaments, and this year, David has somehow corralled 28 teams, playing out there just on Tuesday nights, for the modified, so I don't know, softball, I don't know if they're just coming over from other places, or if it's starting to get a little bit of a resurgence, not real sure, but yeah.
It's actually, yeah, we have the only sanctioned league in the state.
It's neat. So they're coming probably from all over then, which gives more reason to give a little more attention to that area as it's hot right now, right? That would be and then the only direction I would give would be, to start the process for the Packerland Trail, like start those discussions and to, so we can be prepared when it's time to do that project, but. Anybody have anything else to add, or? All right, moving on to 8B. Consider, discuss, act on recommending Ashwaubomay playground options for the 2027 budget.
So we touched a little bit on it before, but this is more of an in-depth thing. We've got a lot of different options that we talked about. The first two pictures on your attachments, if I'm remembering correctly, are what's there right now, which, for being our flagship park,
Not very exciting.
I will let David talk about that. Go for it.
Yeah, if you look at those pictures, I mean, that's not really something that you would expect from a destination park. That's not a reason in itself to come to Ashwaubomay. If you look around at different communities, and some of their big-time parks that they have, a lot of times they've got really over-the-top, beautiful playgrounds, where it draws people, it draws a crowd. We kind of see it at Sand Acres, where it's a beautiful park that we have, really good options.
Our busiest playground.
And there's always people there, no matter what day it is, what the weather's like, there's people there. A lot of, different camps, childcare places, schools will even go there for field trips. So when you see a park like that, that's really something that brings in a crowd. So looking at these pictures, obviously, we want to leave a mark for Ashwaubenon. People are coming to Ashwaubomay, they hear all these great things. I think we should have an impressive playground there that will make people kind of remember our community.
So what we're looking for, on that first picture, you see the two pieces of equipment. That's really the main stuff that we're looking at removing and replacing. The other stuff is still, that rope structure has been there 20 years, that's still in great shape. 2012, I think it was, we put in the, Joel left, we put in the, that ship that's there, for the 3 to 5 age group, that's well used. Kids flock to that. Because it's like, oh, cool, look at that giant ship over there, type of thing. So really what we're looking for is not a wholesale redo, but we're looking to replace the two pieces of equipment that are in that picture, with something that stands out a little bit more, where people go, wow, that's pretty cool. So it's not a huge footprint we have to work with. Ashwaubomay is designated as one of our handicapped accessible parks. So we're probably going to be needing to look at putting in a sidewalk on the, what is that, the northwest stretch. Kind of by the merry-go-round, you know, and then right on the other side of the green thing, that you see in the picture there. And then from that sidewalk, some rubberized surfacing to go to the transfer station so people can play around on the structure itself. With that, we picked 3 manufacturers that we like to work with on previous projects. And we've got some information, just designs of what maybe could go there. You know, if you take a look at even Voyager Park in Appleton, or in right here in De Pere.
Yeah.
It's a huge playground.
Yeah.
And Ashwaubomay, I think, is just as busy at times, if not all the time, as Voyager Park is. And so I really think that we need to upgrade it a little bit. You know,
It's also impactful. It's impactful. When you see that, it's impactful and it draws you to it. And this doesn't. Ours currently doesn't.
no, it doesn't.
But if you look at a lot of these designs that we have, we went pretty vertical with them, so as you're entering the park, you're gonna kind of notice the playground right away, and it's gonna be something that people are gonna want to go to.
We really don't have the room to expand horizontally out there, because you've got the trail, or the gravel pathway, you've got the restrooms, you've got other pieces of playground equipment, which are still good, we don't need to move those. So again, we're looking vertical. And there's different options, you know, there's more of a theme. You see in one of the pictures that are there, if you've had a chance to look at them prior to the meeting, there's like a cool lighthouse. You know, that's probably one of the more expensive ones. Anything that's themed is more expensive.
But that kind of fit in with the ship that's already there, and I thought that there was kind of a nice tie-in. On the other hand, that there's that other one, that NE 23-73435, that it kind of mimics the A-frame. When I looked at the design of it, it's this one.
Okay.
It kind of mimicked, in my mind, when I looked at it, it reminded me of the chalet. And so I felt like the architecture of the playground kind of mimicked the architecture of the pool area, and I thought that was kind of an interesting as well. But I kind of dug how are we gonna decide what to choose? In the past, we have neighborhoods.
We didn't do that for the ship at Ashwaubomay because there's really no, per se, neighborhood around there.
So my question was there the thought?
That was an internal decision.
Okay, would there be any consideration to using the food truck rally to get opinions of the many, 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 many families that are on the playground? Or is that more work than you want?
No, we could. I think what we would do is just get your feelings on, to make
couple
sure
of
this is
them.
something that you felt was a worthy project. And then we'd probably work with each manufacturer. We'd come up with a single design. So
Okay.
really, then we would have 3 designs, one from each manufacturer. And
Yep.
we could decide internally, or bring it, you know, try and have some kind of voting booth or something like that. at a
I just
food
thought the
truck
idea that the food truck rallies are out there and there's always so many families, and I know many families come from other places, and that's kind of what we're looking at with the flagship park, if it was feasible, and it may not be. I realize that.
rally. I don't know. But again, these are just ideas we want to throw out there that we were working on. So some of them,
I loved the one with the lighthouse and the ship that kind of mimicked, that kind of coordinated with the pirate ship out there.
that's the most expensive one.
Well, good taste is good taste. If you want to be flagship, you gotta go big. But I like the way it complemented
The
it.
lighthouse one is unique because we would actually run a electrical line from the building underground, and there's actually a light in the lighthouse that would light up on top.
Makes me love it even more.
I don't know if that's the one that that David and I think would be I mean, there's some pretty good looking options.
What about the one with the sea creatures?
We love the octopus. Is that the one you're
That's,
talking
Yeah.
about?
that's the same company as the Lighthouse, and they kind of held off on showing us that one, and then we saw that one, and we thought that one really,
Yeah, it's like-
really popped too.
Put that in one of the designs. That's kind of fun.
And even our first design here too, on page 23 to 26.
That's the Little Tykes one?
Yeah, that's the Little Tykes one. I think it's cool the way they tie in some of the palm trees and the brighter colors and,
Nope, that's Midwest Playscapes. No, is that Little
that's Little
Tykes?
Tykes. That one's from Erica.
Okay.
But we have, similar palm trees down by the lake too, so it's kind of,
Okay.
that's kinda cool.
So, thoughts, are you good? And I don't even know if we would get approval for this. I mean, obviously administration, I don't know what the budget's gonna be for 27 or anything, but I mean, this is all what the process is to get some prices.
I think it's worth pursuing because it really is, what we have right now is very underwhelming.
Yeah, I guess we wanted to show you ahead of time just because there can be sticker shock when it comes to a bigger and nicer playground. Sometimes it's hard to comprehend what something like that might cost.
Oh, no.
So let's talk about that playground for a second. And how would that get funded? So we've got a lot of different projects we talked about, and a number of them are maintenance type projects. Maintenance type projects need to typically come out of the general fund. We have the park development fund. At this point, we've got about 336,000 sitting in park development. We're going to need to use about 64,000 to supplement some of the tennis court lighting, leaving us with about $272,000 to use however we see fit. Typically, that is new things that need to, that would be needed to accommodate either additional housing starts or additional businesses that come into the community. Because it was the businesses that, in the new housing developments, that paid into that park development fund. So we gotta kind of use it, for that. The way park development works in this case, if you're replacing something, so you have to try and place a reasonable value at what you're taking out. So let's just say the two pieces of equipment that we're taking out, those two structures that we were saying are very good looking and they're probably 25 years old. Well, I know they are. Let's just say the value of those two pieces are $75,000. You can't use park development funds for that initial piece because you've already got that, it's already there. So $75,000 of whatever the final cost was would need to be paid for by village funds, general fund, tax dollars. But the remainder of it could be paid for out of park development. So it would be a combination of whatever value is assigned to the current playground equipment that we're ripping out, that needs to be paid, those dollars for the new costs would need to be paid through the general fund. The remainder, because we're making a bigger and better playground that can accommodate more people due to the increased number of housing starts and apartments and businesses that are being built in the area, that additional money then can be paid from park development. So that's a little bit how that works, in terms of, because you're thinking, well, you're just setting all those trails, how expensive those are gonna be, how are you funding a playground equipment? That's how. So small amount, I don't wanna say small, because it's not small, but a certain amount would be paid out of the general fund, the value of what's currently there now, but the rest could be paid for out of park development. And like I said, we've got 272,770 left. So that kind of gives us a starting point of, like when we're working on these designs, like what the cap would be of what we could afford. Versus just, hey, let's make a $500,000 playground. Well, we don't have money for a $500,000 playground. Dean?
So Rex, let's say we have this pot of money, is there any development area, housing development area in Ashwaubenon where money has been paid into that fund where there's gonna be a future park there that we need to put money towards that particular park?
That's all part of it. There's, you know, we've got all these corp plan things, and so what do we want to spend the money on? The challenge is, park development money needs to be spent within 7 years of receipt. I'll say that again. When we receive park development money from these, you know, like right next door, the new apartments that are being built, multifamily units, I think we're getting $648 per unit, per apartment. You know, so I think for these over here, that's worth like $50,000 just from this new building that's going into the park development. Has to be spent within 7 years. Or if not, then it needs to be refunded to the developer. So you can ask for like a couple-year extension for extenuating circumstances by action of your village board or city council. There are state laws of how that all works. But we've got some money sitting in there right now. We spent a good amount of money on Jerry Van Sistine Park. I mean, that whole park, you know, that probably was, what, David, 250,000? It was all that came all out of the park development fund. That whole park was built with park development money. So this is what we still have left, which is great. That means that the economy is still going. We don't have any projects in the near horizon, the village as a whole. I think we only took in about $12,000 this year into the park development fund. The gathering area, you know, is probably gonna be 25. You know, when you're talking furniture, concrete, you know, that type of thing. So there's some different things that we're gonna have to plan for, which would give us a final budget number to submit for a playground option, I guess, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Do we know do we have a certain dollar amount that the clock is ticking on out of that money?
I think we've been good in terms of spending that money where the clock was ticking. That's what we use for Jerry Van Sistine.
Yeah, no, I'm just
kind of-
wondering if we're gonna lose 50,000 or 100,000 in 2 years or something, that we should be spending it now rather than losing it.
I think we've got plenty of projects we can spend it on right away where we wouldn't have to worry about that.
Okay.
I mean, literally throughout my whole tenure, I spend money out of that park development fund. So there's constantly money coming in, constantly money going out on park improvements. That's where a lot of our park improvements, how they've been able to be funded is through that park development fund. Otherwise, it would have been on the general tax roll, and I guarantee you probably half the stuff we've done wouldn't have been able to happen.
How's the value assessed on the current equipment?
You kind of just take what, like if you were to replace that equipment, what would today's prices be for?
Gotcha, okay.
That's how I would say we would argue it.
Yep.
And I'm gonna guess, I mean, it's not much. You know, I'm guessing somewhere between 60 and 75,000 to replace that, if we were to buy the same stuff.
Right.
Would we reuse that?
Probably not, because there's no place to really use it. You know, I know we're working with the person right now that's representing an organization at Canterbury for when Canterbury stuff gets tore out, because we've got that, we've already received that. It's in our storage building. So when that comes out, we're working with someone on potentially having them reuse that at somewhere else. I know there's a lot of organizations that literally ship that stuff to a different country. you know, to try and repurpose it versus just throwing it away. I don't know what condition it'll be in once it's removed. We will see. But I don't know how to answer that right now, because I don't know if anyone would be interested in it. We probably would not be putting it somewhere else.
So we don't have another park that it would fit into.
No. I think a lot of our park playgrounds are pretty good right now. So it would, I don't know.
Really an upgrade.
Yeah, I don't know if anything needs more playground equipment. It could just be taking space away from that park. You know, you did ask me, I can't remember, Dean or Ron, if you asked me, I think another park. There is that, I think that might have been Dean that mentioned this. So there is another park that's eventually planned in the far southwest corner. You know, kind of behind D&D Landscaping, between D&D Landscaping and Sand Acres Park, that whole giant field in there, that's the last really big piece of developable land in the village. You know, it's where Highland Ridge homes are all going in there. We were asked if we wanted a piece of property for this phase to put a new park in. And we went online and, you know, we measured distances and, you know, like, it was a quarter mile away. And as much as I would love to have more parks, you know what I mean? Because that's what we like to do. It didn't make sense. You know, like, yes, Sand Acres is busy, but are we building another park a quarter mile away? We kind of did that with Argonne and Canterbury, you know, and so do we need to do that? So it's almost like I had talked with administration, and it's like, let's wait for the next phase where it's further out, where it's gonna better serve. Again, I'm thinking 20 years down the line, when there's more development in homes or whatever goes in there, it'll better serve people a little farther out versus if we built one where Highland Ridge currently is, it's going to, or where Sand Acres currently is, it's just a park, side-by-side park. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. So. When that's going to happen, when the next phase is gonna happen, that's the X factor, you know. Is it gonna happen in the next 7 years? You know, because that's when it would need to happen to use any of the current money. You know, but they're still building homes in the current phase. So.
So do you want us to select 2 or 3 of these?
No, I think it's more of a concept, Dean, that,
Okay.
yeah, if you think it's a worthy project for us to move forward on, we would get, David and I would work with the manufacturers, we'd come up with the design, we measure out the footprint. Based on the footprint, we give them the dimensions of where they have to work with. We'd work with the manufacturers, come up with the design, and then bring those designs back to you. Of here's what we might be interested in submitting to the village board as an option for funding 27.
So make sure they're all in budget, David. Don't give me any more that you're gonna then tell me that it's expensive.
And we do have, prices, or some general quotes to it, just to kind of give us a ballpark figure for what we're looking at budget-wise.
I still like tying it in thematically, simply because then it doesn't just look like a hodgepodge. I like the idea that there's some kind of connection, whether it's this or something, so that it doesn't just look like you're randomly throwing pieces of equipment in to the park.
I like that they're tall. It just seems like it'd be such a wow factor when you would see them. I think it'd make just a really good addition to Ashwaubomay.
Yeah, and I know I've said it 1,000 times, but even this weekend, we had another tournament and nothing but glowing reviews from people. Like, these are a lot of the smaller kids, and we've never been here. This is so awesome. So, like, just another draw for that park. When we have a tournament, there's soccer going on, there's a food truck rally, more eyes on there, and maybe, as Sand Acres is arguably one of our busier parks as well, for the playground, that alleviates some of that pressure for when that other subdivision does go in. Because I know people that brought my kids to Sand Acre Park to play on that playground, right? Cause it's destination playground. What if we could rival that with this one? Yeah. And the height scares me, but, cause the thing is, Sand Acres Park,
Go over to Voyager Park. Have you
I was
been
gonna
to
say,
Voyager?
I know.
I refuse, I
But-
will not take
On
my,
top of there, I looked down, I'm going, excuse my language, holy cow, that is high.
yeah.
I look at things now, cause I watched a kid in Black Creek at a tournament, I'm like, oh my God, like you're gonna break your neck up there. Like, I'm looking at all these structures going, I'm gonna vote on the one that looks like the person cannot get onto the roof. Cause there's nobody, like my biggest fear would be coming there some morning to whatever and see a kid laying all discombobulated on the ground because he fell off the roof. Why he'd be on the roof at midnight, I don't know, but kids are kids.
David, if you wanna maybe point out like the slides, what those circles are on the slides, a lot of the designs.
Yeah, some of those bigger slides that you're looking at, they kinda got a panel. So it makes it where you can't just climb up the slide like they do to get up to the.
I'm sold on that.
That's what those panels are for, so you can't.
That's considered a challenge.
Up there.
I tell you what, climbing trees,
We'll grease up the outside of the.
Challenge
yeah, I like that
accepted.
too.
Do they wear safety gear if they're climbing on these poles? So
The bamboo poles too, right?
that didn't look like anything that appealed to me.
But yeah, on page 52, that's called the bamboo jungle, which is a unique thing that's getting to be more popular with middle school and high school kids, but it's kind of color coded. I think the one that they showed there has 26 different posts, but you can climb all different heights and take different routes, and
There's so many cool stuff. There's so much cool stuff that's out there.
and Rex said too, some of them, with the way they light them up with actually putting lights in the playground and stuff like that's pretty cool, especially, baseball games, springtime or fall where you don't have a ton of daylight necessarily, the playground is still usable too if families are out there.
I think it's a great idea.
All right, any other
Your budget-friendly options.
discussion, action, or consideration? All right, moving on, 8C, consider, discuss, act on current department projects for 2026. Take us away, Rex.
All right, so this is basically more of an information only, but if you have comments, I put act, so that way we could talk about them. All these new rules now with what we can talk about and what we can't talk about, but that's why I did that. So just an update on things that we're currently working on. The band shell is complete. There has been sod, so we're going back and forth. Originally, the budget was, to put seed down and then straw everything and just let it develop naturally, and that wouldn't happen by our opening date, and so we're worried it would be like too much of a mud hole, so we sodded the front half in front, which I think will be good, and kind of on the side and the back is where we did the seed. So that's why we're doing that, and then we've got like a hose running from the community center, and so we're watering it on a daily basis until the beginning of our summer concert season. So that will work out good. We did get a $50,000 grant for a shade structure that our community development director, Aaron Schutte, was able to acquire last year. And so we are doing a shade structure. We've got that long piece of concrete with the picnic tables kind of in front of the stage. So if you go back maybe another 20, 25 feet, we're going to do a shade structure that kind of mirrors the length of the concrete slab. So we're excited about that. It's gonna be like a combination of, I should have put a picture down, I'm sorry, of like, it's almost like horizontal sails, triangular sails.
Yep.
That are at different levels. So it's really visual, I think it's visually appealing versus just like a tent.
Kind of artsy looking at it. So.
Yeah. So that will not be, the band shell will be ready to go for our first concert. The shade structure won't be delivered or manufactured until the first concert. But we're hoping to potentially get that shade structure in for the last couple of concerts in '26. But that'll look kind of cool. And underneath it, what we'll probably do, because we're gonna have all the picnic tables, is we'll probably take care of the, I don't wanna say kill the grass, but we'll kill the grass underneath it. And then we'll put all wood chips underneath it and then put the tables on the wood chips. That way, we won't have to be moving all these picnic tables every single week for the mowers to go in there and weed whacking and stuff like that. So if we just make it all easy to maneuver wood chips in there. That's what our thought is right now. All right, Canterbury Park Playground, David, this has been really your project, so talk a little bit about that for a sec.
That got delivered 2 weeks ago. So something that we're excited to get in. I know, just waiting on people to start working. We're pretty short-staffed right now, so we're kind of holding off for
till
right
the
now
college
until the
students
kids
come
get
in.
back. Yeah, so, but yeah, that'll be something that our maintenance crew installs.
The bigger projects are done by our full-time staff, and right now we are prepping literally 13 or 14 softball, baseball diamonds daily. And that's taking a lot of our time. So until the college kids can take that job over, they're trickling back in. But we've also hired 4 graduating seniors, and they won't be able to start work until June 8th, I think it is. So, and some of these bigger projects, we'll have to wait until we have our full complement of employees. Talk about the trail a little bit too.
Ashwaubomay Park Trail, that's really been moving along. We had a meeting out there this morning with all our contractors just to discuss issues that we've discovered since the time it was installed. We had some issues pop up in fall. So we waited to go through the winter time, waited for the frost to come out of the ground to see how the winter affected those issues that we had. For the most part, I would say it was pretty similar to what we had discovered in fall, with the exception of a few different places. But we were able to mark all the spots on the trail, work it out with different contractors, and come up with a solution to how we were going to get some of that cracking repaired. What we thought was, I guess, a fair way to handle it for the village, since it is a brand new trail with an extended warranty, them covering the cost of some of that crack repair. There were 2 actually, and then we found a third little spot where there must be some kind of a rock under the trail that kind of heaved up during the winter time. So they're able to actually take a core, like a 6-inch core, out of the trail and pull that out, and then repatch it up.
And David, this is just a little sidelight because it just popped into my head. Are all of the locks off of the bridge?
That's a good question. I know Dan was on top of it for quite a while. And
Last year he was. I don't know if he's gone out there
this year, yeah,
this spring, because he's been
running every
so
direction.
busy, yeah.
That's something that we could check in with him tomorrow.
I'm
and
assuming
see.
there's locks on the rail, on the, is that?
On the wires, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be something that, with coming off winter, that we need to probably check in on again and take care of that.
Yeah.
I'm tending not to want it to become what the pier has.
I tell you, when we went to Paris, one of the bridges, there was actually, you could not find any spot on that bridge where there wasn't a lock. And actually, it was causing damage to the bridge itself because of the weight.
Because of the weight.
Yep.
They multiply quickly out there too once they're seen out there.
I don't know what that thing is. They take a lock and they clamp it onto the wire stretches, and
I thought you wanted this to be a destination park, though. People will come to put their locks up.
Well, I'll keep cutting them, and then they'll have to keep coming back and putting them on. That's the thing.
No, the original thought was there was a couple that went and they were locked together in love, so they put a lock on the bridge and then it just ballooned. And, well, of course, that was in Europe, but I wouldn't want the same thing to happen here.
The pier must be the city of love. because
Yeah,
we've got about
it's
500
full.
to 1,000
There you
miles
go.
on
Yeah.
the bridge.
That walk, that viewing platform is full.
All right. Amenities for Waterford Park, so the gathering area as well as some of the slabs along the Ashwaubomay Park Trail. We've got about 17 skids of picnic tables and benches and
Garbage cans.
Nice.
And they're all in storage right now, waiting for staff to be able to put them together, so.
I would say one cool thing with that stuff, kind of out on the point, out on that kind of fanned out concrete slab, we were able to get stuff that a lot of it is actually like our village colors. So like we have an orange garbage can and like gold and orange seats and benches and stuff like that. So try to make it a little bit more fun versus just everything.
Kind of make it
Kinda boring.
match with the tulip chairs.
Yeah.
So that is in, that's been delivered, so it's just a matter of, it's all in like wood boxes, and so
It's gonna take a while just to open up all the boxes.
NRDA project, talked about that a little bit for Ashwaubomay and Dutchman's Creek. Again, we just finalized the agreement with the DNR a week or two ago, so Stantec will now, has been given the go-ahead to start working on the bid specifications for that. Pioneer Park Tennis Court lighting, we're looking at, what is that, the day after,
May 26th, I think.
May
is what it
26th, that's the day after Memorial Day, right? So that's the start date. Wouldn't be surprised if they start to mobilize. The light posts are like in transit right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if even before Memorial Day, they start to put some of that stuff in the parking lot so that they can get right to it that particular week. It's not gonna take long to take those old lights down and to put the new lights in. It should only take a week or two to do that, so it won't be out of commission for very long. In the meantime, if David has any tennis classes or anything like that going on, we're just gonna be moving them probably over to Smith Park or somewhere until we can get back over to Pioneer. Ashwaubenon Marina Walkway, that's the one project we've got that's kind of lagging right now. We just haven't had time to work on it. I say the bid specs about halfway to 75% done, somewhere in there. Hoping to get those out in the next month. We're working with Stantec on the Phragmite control efforts. That is going to be in front of Cabela's again, planting more trees and shrubs, trying different ones out. Some of the ones they planted didn't make it last year, so we're trying some different ones out that are less susceptible to issues with the water table as high as it is there. And then we're also gonna be doing some Phragmites control that's starting to pop up in the right-of-way between Lombardi Avenue and the access road. And you're starting to see, now we've got some cattails in there, those would stay, but there's a lot of frags that's starting to pop up. So we wanna spray that and take care of that before that gets out of control. So that is part of the whole frag control plan that we're working on with Stantec. And then Ashwaubomay roof projects, just talking with the timing on everything, we've got a start date of, we're not gonna do that till after the swim season. That was all part of the whole thing with trainings and everything like that we have in there. So we've got a start date of September 10th for the roofing projects. And that's for the chalet, the cafe, and the lake shelter. So that's where we are at with the projects we're working on right now. If anyone has specific questions, now is a good time to ask, because we can talk about them.
Rex, did you say you were gonna keep the cattails?
At this point, yes, they're not considered an invasive species.
They aren't. Okay.
They're more ecologically friendly to the wildlife than the frag, which is so thick that wildlife can't even get in there.
When is the opening for band shell? I'm sorry, I missed that.
So June 10th is our first concert. That's kind of a
And that's the,
run.
the Wednesday concert in the park
Yep.
series starts. Okay.
June 10th is the first one. Again, that's more of a test run type of a thing. The official dedication / ribbon cutting / introducing and showing appreciation for our community donors will be on Wednesday, the 17th. That will be at 11 o'clock. You'll all be getting a special invitation for that. But if you want to try and set that aside, again, we're looking at Wednesday, I believe it's the 17th, at 11 o'clock.
Correct, 17th.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Hearing nothing, we will move on to item number 9, items for the next agenda. Anybody have any items that they'd like to
I've
discuss?
got 2. So I'm at this point, we're still on, but I'd like to get Tim, our forester, in here to give a forester report. We really haven't had one of those in a long time. I think it's important so that everyone kind of knows where he is at. Project-wise, he's got a list a mile long, not even counting all the individual resident things, which are unfortunately keep getting pushed back. But, you know, we just got all of the stumps ground and all new soil, reseeded everything for the trees that were taken down around the village. So, in the right of ways in front of people's homes. So he'll talk about how the village will be divided up into different quadrants and when trees will be replanted in each quadrant for those homes that want a replacement tree for their ash tree that was taken down. We'll talk about that. We've got some things going on in Sherwood Forest that are causing a lot of angst because that forest was predominantly ash and a lot of ash around the perimeter of the park that are falling into people's yards and on their sheds and on their fences. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit and what our plan is to do there, as well as in some conservancy areas. So that's one thing that he'll be talking about. The other agenda item that I have, well, we're going to be, I think we need to officially take nominations for a vice chair. But and that just came up this evening, so. Those are the 2 things that I have right now. Vice chair nomination and report.
Can I ask, is there, does the forestry department have a separate budget, or how does those other trees falling into yards, where does that money come from?
That's all bonded. I think the village has agreed, the village board agreed, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago when we kind of laid this whole thing out. So the village has bonded a couple $1 million or agreed to do that over the course of the years. You know, a couple $100,000 a year is what they're doing. So like when we're bonding for, if we bond for like any road project or a bridge replacement, we're adding on, okay, our finance department talks with Tim,
Okay.
and he says, here's what we can do this year, and this is what I would anticipate the cost being. So they add that on to the bond so that we have money then to take care of all the trees that we're dealing with. So right now, I don't want to say they're all taken care of, but there's still some trees that need to be taken down in some parks, i.e. Sherwood Forest is the big one, and then some conservancy areas. You know, every time there's a big windstorm, you know, not all the conservancy areas are, you know, cleared out. So there's always trees that are falling in and then blocking the stream and the water flowage and then backing up in neighbors' yards, and then either us or Public Works have to go in there and take stuff out. So that's all part of the overall EAB plan, is to try and get stuff cleared out. But Sherwood's gonna be a big one. We get a lot of phone calls on that, and as well as administration of this tree's gonna fall on my thing and you're gonna be paying for it type of thing. Which I totally get, totally understand that. So, you know, and then, so if we take those down, and there's, you know, there's a lot of them, you know, because Sherwood Forest is a pretty big park. What do we do with them? The whole park is filled with ash, from one side to the other, dead ash. And so how much of that dead ash do we leave on the ground? Some of it, sure, but how much do we take out? So a lot of that stuff that we'll be cutting down on the perimeters, we're probably looking if we can gain access through people's lawns, through signed agreements and things like that. We're looking at probably removing a lot of those trees, just so that it's not basically a lumber yard type of a thing in there over there. There will be plenty of trees still left in there. Anything in the center of the park, we're not gonna be able to get typically because it's all wetland area and those boardwalks don't support anything more than like a gator, you know, John Deere gator, which we've got. So the stuff in the center probably needs to be left. And then, but on the perimeter, I think if we have the ability to take some of that stuff out, we will. That's for Tim to talk about though, when he does his report.
I would think that they would take out anything that would result as a liability to the village.
Yeah. That's gonna be everything around the perimeter that can fall on private property and anything that can potentially harm someone if they're walking on our trail system. So it's gonna change the look of Sherwood.
Yeah,
Forest.
well, I was just gonna say, that's gonna be interesting.
You know, so then we're probably gonna talk about doing some replanting and trying to probably reforest that a little bit.
What is the park by Snyder got? Is that, there a lot of ash in there too, or not?
There are, Hidden Valley, there are. We've taken quite a few down out of there already, over the years, kind of picking and choosing at times, but that still has a lot of ash in there. That's not as bad as Sherwood though.
And you don't have as many homes directly adjacent that are affected by it. It's a little more secluded, so it, from a safety standpoint, if you're walking there, but you don't have that constant worry about something on someone's home or property.
So those are the two agenda items that I have that I know we'll be doing for the June meeting. As long as Tim can make the June meeting, so.
Does anybody have anything else to add?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh, you know what, I have one more thing, I'm sorry. One more
I'm
thing.
sorry, we have a motion.
Denied.
So I wanna do a report because there's been one or two people that have a concern about how we're doing weed control in our parks, because we do use herbicide in our parks, on our athletic fields and I rotated around, you know, different parks, keep dandelions down, because if I don't do that, I get dozens of phone calls of get rid of your dandelions type of thing. But, you know, I want to give a report on, not a report, but just kind of explain what our process is on pesticide application. So.
What if people want to make dandelion wine though? You're taking it long.
Come to my yard, I have plenty.
I'll second Ron's motion.
Well, let's make it official. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.